Welcome back, Headbangers, and today I'm spinning the wax with Benjamin T. Mainwaring of The Nightmares, and we're listening to Blink-182's 2003 self-titled album. Don't go anywhere, it all starts right now.
She saw something in the dark, and she'll never be the same. She saw something in the dark. She saw something in the dark.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Spinning the Wax, where we listen to your favorite artists' favorite records. My name is John Garcia, aka Stay Puft, the Metal Marshmallow, and your friendly neighborhood headbanger. Today, I'm happy to host Benjamin T. Mainwaring, bassist of the South Wales Norpop band The Nightmares, who've been making a name for themselves across the UK ever since their 2023 debut album, Seance. If you haven't listened to them before, they're steeped in goth rock mystique and will be of interest to anyone who's a fan of The Cure, Interpol, Alkaline Trio, and the very band that we're going to be listening to next. Ben brings on Blink-182's self-titled 2003 album, citing it not only as a landmark album for his musical taste and the development of the eventual identity of the Nightmares with his friend Adam Parslow, but for also helping him find his own identity as well. Though some opinions were split at the time regarding Blink's maturation, for lack of a better word, with this album, it was everything Ben needed to hear at the time, and songs like All of This with The Cure's Robert Smith really opened up musical doors for him and eventually the band. We discussed what it was like for Ben growing up in Wales, the hiatus and turmoil that Blink were experiencing before this album that led to the jump in personal lyrics and vulnerability across it, and how Ben feels about their later albums and current output. He also goes to bat for the band, saying that even before this album, on Dude Ranch and Cheshire Cat, there's so much more depth to them than what you initially see, especially if you're only familiar with the singles or the pee-pee, poo-poo, penis fart joke songs that they have. Of course, Ben also provides some insight into the Nightmares' newest album, Fire in Heaven, which is out on February 14th, including the expanded role of keyboardist and vocalist Eleanor Coburn, being able to write an album outside of lockdown for once, and how the band has structured the album to be a full experience, like in the old days where you would doze in a bed listening to a CD late at night. You know, those of you who actually remember CDs. It's a really great conversation, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it, especially because I generally do not like Blink-182 at all. Their vocals just really like drive me insane. So this is the first time I've really, I guess, not been at odds with a guest on there, but have really, listened to something that I generally am not a fan of. But after going back to this album for the first time in like 20 years and spending a bunch of time with it, it's really easy to see all the things that Ben loves about the record and all the things that endeared it to him. And yes, of course, you will see that in real time. So whether you are a Blink fan or not, I hope that you'll enjoy and join us for another wax spin. Please welcome Benjamin T. Mainwaring to Spinning the Wax. Sir, it's so good to have you, my friend. Welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm very well. It's very cold outside. It's currently snowing in Wales. So I'm just staring out into the cold abyss as we speak. So
That's amazing.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, we were talking about that before. Is like you get a nice little bit of snow and then it goes on. When I woke up this morning, I thought it was going to be like a proper British day. It was cold, overcast, misty rain, all that stuff. But now it's just a beautiful 45-degree day, which I don't know what that is in Celsius. Probably like 5 degrees. I don't know. Is 5 degrees like cold, but like not super cold? Yeah, I would imagine that's
a jacket weather, as we call it.
That's exactly, yes. I wore a jacket when I went out today. But my friend, so thank you so much for lending your time and coming on the podcast. I know, so the last time we spoke was almost exactly a year ago, just about some change from weeks here and there, when I was fortunate enough to be in Glasgow while the Nightmares were playing with Creeper, and it was an amazing show. The Glasgow audience was fucking phenomenal. I don't know how much experience you have playing up with them, but it was just like they could sing song like I've never heard before, like all the chants and everything like that. How is that experience touring and playing with Creeper, and how has it been since that time, man, as you've been kind of getting ready to write more music, get an album out, all that good stuff?
It's been great. That tour was probably, I think we'd all agree, probably our one of our best tours, if not our best tour. It was the perfect tour for us, so really set us on a good path after that, with their fan base embracing us. So it was just a really incredible time. Like you say, Glasgow is amazing. But to be honest, I know people say it's a cliche, but every single stop on that tour was great, because I just feel like they obviously have a very perfect audience for us.
Yeah.
So that was great. And then since then, we've done a headline tour of our own. That was in March of this year, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, we did that tour. That was a success. We took out a band called Moth Slut, who are also friendly with Creeper, and I believe have actually supported Creeper around Halloween.
Oh, hell yeah.
So they're a great duo that is definitely worth checking out. And then across the year, then basically we've been writing the new album, which was entitled Fire in Heaven, which will be coming out in February next year. So yeah, it's been quite a busy year. We've just really knuckled down on writing, though. We focused on that after the success of the first album. So
Yeah, and I'll wait a little bit to get into all of that later on in the episode and everything like that. But I'm definitely interested to hear how the band has progressed from being basically like a COVID band and stuff like that, to finally getting out and playing your songs in front of people, and then kind of having this idea and this like experience and more years and stuff like that to get in there. But you mentioned about how Creeper was just such a perfect band and with a perfect audience to play. And I agree 100%. And yeah, it was just a nice goth night in early November. I think it was like a night or two after Bonfire Night or something like that. So it was fucking great, man. And which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit before we get too far in the weeds. We are here to listen to an album that I honestly don't have a lot of familiar with, and a band that I don't have a whole lot of familiarity with other than, the songs that you can't escape from them. We are going to be listening to Blink-182's self-titled album, the Untitled Album. I've got my colors all in the room, all matching it and everything like that. I'll talk about my experience with Blink-182 in a little bit, and have all the people that are listening booing me and all that other stuff. But you were talking about how this is such a formative record, not just for yourself, but for Adam and for other people in the band. Why, Ben, do you like this record and love this record so much?
I think really to know the full story of it, you need to just quickly go back.
Please, we got time.
Me being in school, or a younger person growing up, I was kind of shy, believe it or not, as people might know me now. But I was very shy and meek, and I never got bullied or anything in particular, but I was like a little, chubby, geeky kid. And I couldn't find myself, I was the type of kid that, tried to, I'd want to go home from school. I'd fake sickness, that kind of thing. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be my mom,
Yeah.
And it went on like that for a while. And then because of my size, I was like a big kid, like they want in Wales, rugby is very popular. And a teacher really wanted me to play rugby. I didn't want to play, and it was just not good. I tried football. I love football to this day. Soccer is over in the States,
Of course.
but I wasn't very good at it. So I never, I tried to join a team. It didn't really happen. It wasn't good. I wasn't good enough. The kids weren't great, blah, blah, blah. So then I went to school. I went to what you guys would call high school. And for the first year or two, I was just like, kind of finding my feet again. I had friends, lots of friends, but not like I didn't know my identity. And then around, must have been like, 12, 13, I discovered Blink. So this would have been the era around Dude Ranch going into Enema of the State.
Yeah.
And then around then you had the Urethra Chronicles, which was the DVD they released. It's just really connected with me. That kind of energetic pop punk music, skate punk, whatever you want to call it, was just really helpful in shaping my outlook, my style, what I liked, and and then picking up the CD, I became obsessed with it.
Mm.
and I look at thank you notes, blah blah blah, and then you get other punk bands and pop punk, you go off down a tangent. So they are the fundamental, the quintessential gateway band for a lot of people, and they were for me. Then Take Off Your Pants Jacket came out, and we were growing with them. Obviously, as things went on, then around 2001, obviously the self-titled came out. But before that, the Youth Chronicles, and I think it was their humor, the way they approached music, and it really helped shape me. I found my voice. I just became more confident. I grew in my friendship circles. Grew. I realized that I could sort of steal things from them, their humor, and
Yeah.
it helped me form who I am today. And because of that, I carried them with me, through my life, and they remain an anomaly in many ways. But they are my favorite band of all time, the most important band to me. But they remain an anomaly, really, because anyone who knows me, I don't really like novelty things. Not that they're a novelty band, but Steel Panther or something like that. I love metal, heavy metal, but I don't like things that are too hokey.
Like, yeah, gimmicky or anything like that.
Yeah. So, and some people might accuse them of that if they didn't do a deep dive, which
of
I'm
course.
sure maybe your experience of just hearing things like First Date, etc.
Yeah.
So this is why it's so important then that in 2003, when this album came out, it had sort of blended the pop punk elements, but then found more post-hardcore and like some of the goth 80s metal, not metal, goth 80s music that we'll go into shortly, and blended it with the Cure sort of sound. So that's why it's such a big album. I think it's sort of like that. They blended things together and helped form something new.
Yeah, very much like a coming of age album. Yeah, I feel like
Exactly,
for
yeah.
a lot of people, and it's like I love that story, and I love that you were like, I resonated with a lot of that, as far as like finding a band and not being lost and trying to find yourself and not knowing where, and then for me it's taken a really long time to kind of like find who like I think I am and who I'm comfortable with and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that it was like an immediate thing for you or anything, but just having that spark to find your era and find your lane and find your people and stuff like that. I mean, I think that's so important. And it's also interesting to see, you growing along with the band. And I'm sure that there will probably be many people, whether they, came in on Dude Ranch or Enema or this album or whatever it was, that had that kind of same experience of like growing with both this music and this band. When this album came out, I think I was just starting high school, and I had at this point kind of transitioned from the your Nirvanas and your Foo Fighters and your kind of like alternative rock and like whatever was on the radio at the time in 2000 2001 to I had found Iron Maiden by this point. I had found Metallica at this point, right? And I had started to deviate from that friend group that I had in middle school to start going down the heavy metal path. And I remember when this album came out because it was ubiquitous, as I'm sure that you remember. It was fucking everywhere, like t-shirts. It was in like fucking Best Buy, FYE, Sam Goody. For those of you that don't know what any of those are electronic stores that used to sell these things called CDs. And yeah, like it was everywhere and inescapable on like all the music channels, on all the radios and everything like that. But I never felt compelled to like really go down into this album until like I guess it was just like very recently. And a lot of that has to do with spinningthewax@gmail.com. Send me your thoughts on this, but the vocals for me, Ben, are like the biggest drawback for this band and always have been. And
Sure.
that started to get into like other pop punk that was influenced by Blink-182, and then you're like your Midwest emo and your Midwest pop punk and stuff like that whiny, nasally type of deal was just like could never jive with me. And I was like, we talked about this when we were setting up the album. I went back to start doing like, well, let me just, go back and start going through to kind of like refresh myself with everything. And I got like 3/4 of the way through Dude Ranch. And I was like, I can't do it anymore, man. I cannot do this anymore. But being that said, all the small things, like Adam's song, all of that stuff, like it just burned in my brain forever just from the time that I was growing up. But how did you were you into like rock or punk music or anything like that before you found Blink 182, or is this really like a big, like I guess, big bang for you to really start getting into music to doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, they were pretty much they were one of the first. They weren't
Okay,
the first,
sure.
but around this time, obviously, the Offspring
Oh
were a big
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bear in mind, I also got to remember the people that wouldn't know who I am or where I'm from. I live in Wales, in a tiny little country, in a tiny village, in a place called Pontypool, and it's like a little. We don't get exposed to many things
Hmm.
like punk rock and that kind of thing. So it it took a while for it to cipher through a little bit.
Yeah,
But yeah, Blink, Offspring, and then obviously Limp Bizkit, Korn, stuff like that. The big boom of new metal was
yeah,
sort of they were a parallel to each other around that time, really, weren't they? So you had the skate punk thing like Green Day and everything, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
they were. I mean, as you say, they were everywhere around that era. So they were one of the first bands that myself and my friends would have been exposed to. So yeah, they were very much a starting point and a gateway into everything else, and then it all just went down the rabbit hole. So to
Yeah,
speak.
exactly. No, I mean, in my life, I feel like this is one of, the top, top gateway bands I could think of. Top three, top five, who fucking knows? But I mean, I
Yeah.
know. I mean, I think people like our age or around. If you just said like, do you know Blink 182 or could you name a song or whatever? I feel like even if they don't listen to them, people could do that just because of
Oh,
how
yeah.
how big that they were. And yeah, I guess I'm excited to get into this because this is very much a, I guess, more for sounding cliche, way more mature and diverse and varied album compared
Oh
to
yeah.
anything else. And like, I do fuck with Enema of the State. I don't want to say that like, oh, Blink
Oh,
182 is like, I hate them and whatever. It's just
yeah.
like, they have a part of their musicality that it just doesn't jive with me, but
Of
I still
course.
fuck with
Yeah.
that as well and everything like that. But it is really an interesting album to go from like Enema of the State, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket to this one, and really shows that they weren't just trying to be the fucking like naked poo poo pee pee fucking funny band or whatever. They really were kind of
Yeah.
struggling with their identity and trying to figure out what they wanted to do next, especially because they also had, so many side projects that were going around at this
Oh
time as
yeah.
well.
For sure. For sure.
So this is Blink 182's untitled, self-titled 2003 album. Let's go. 3, 2, 1, play. What are your first memories of this album?
Oh, my first memory of this album, it would have been this song. Because this song, I believe, was leaked. It was like a song that came out on the internet and it was shared around on things like MSN at the time and that kind of thing. And I just remember being like, wow, this is different. And we actually they played Reading Festival around this time, and I went to see it. I actually met them on
Oh,
this
really?
at this time.
Okay.
I met them before I saw them, and it was pretty nice for that experience because I was such a huge fan. It was mind blowing to think that I could meet them before I did, but I did, and they were amazing. It was just a brilliant, amazing day. But at this point, this is the first song that came out. This was all I knew about this album at this time.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I'm
it was
looking
a,
at the lead single from this one, released October 6th of 2003, just
yeah,
about a month before the album came out. I actually do like this song. It does their ability to put together just a catchy melody or a hook is crazy. It's crazy.
really. I think a lot of what you said earlier about Dude Ranch, and I get that some people struggle with the vocals previous to say Enema of the State, and I think a lot of that has to do with the production from Jerry Finn,
Hmm.
which is he did this album. He also did albums like Sing the Sorrow by AFI. He did some Morrissey, um, amongst other artists like Alkaline Trio. And so yeah, he gave him that polished sort of sound which you hear on Enema and Take Off Your Pants and Jacket,
Yeah.
and then they developed on this album. But they definitely have an amazing ear for melody. 100%. You know, I think that's you know, it's you can't deny that. You know, even if you like the band or you don't like them.
No, exactly. And like I'm sitting here saying that they do, and you know, again, there are just some songs that are inescapable that are just like always in your head and then like always go. And you know, it's one of those things, just like with food, every once in a while after a little bit I'm just like, okay, well, let me try it again, like let me dip in and like and see where it's at. And I know that there are bands that just, no matter what, you know, I'll try it. I'm not gonna like them or anything like that. But like, I've got Blink
Sure.
songs on my playlist, and I do like this. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to start this this project, is to be exposed to other things that I might not go back and listen to again, or just to have a, okay, well, I'm talking with someone that likes something that I don't really, but like, where can we find the commonalities and everything like that? So
Absolutely. Yeah, I
it's
think
fun
that's
to be
important.
like, yeah, I think it's fun to be out of my element a little bit like this, because you know, like I said, I think, you know, you were talking about, you know, finding who you were and feeling a little lost and not knowing who you were and stuff like that. I definitely felt a lot of that with not being too crazy of a fan of this band, given how many people my age were like, either not even just obsessed, but really liked or wanted to go to shows or listen to them all the time. You know, I had
Sure.
T-shirts or things and everything like that. And I was just like, no, I don't get it. I don't know. And it made me feel very much like other and like alienated and stuff like
That's
that.
interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and like a lot of that has to do with like, you know, I found out later in my life, you know, like I'm neurodivergent, and there's a lot of things elsewhere that are just like I've had to figure out and deal with like in my brain and stuff like that. But you know, I felt there was a long time, especially we talk a lot about on the show about you know, the, you know, oh, you don't like this band, you suck, or like, how do you not know these bands or whatever if you say that you're a fan of metal or a fan of this music or whatever. That was very much present when I was growing up, and I always went like, I felt like, oh, if I didn't like something that someone else liked, well, they don't like me personally, and I didn't like that, you know, which obviously is bullshit, and I had to get through that. But yeah, I definitely felt a little alienated with some going through high school, like not really being a big Blink fan when they were like the hotness around that time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I can. That's a very interesting thought process. I've never, you know, been on the other end of it. I mean,
Yeah.
again, obviously, you've got to remember that. Not remember, but I guess being a kid in Wales in the UK, it was slightly different
Of
to being a younger
course.
person in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
States, where they're from, and they're going to be, as you say, omnipresent and just everywhere. And
Everywhere,
it's part
dude.
of your and very much your culture. Not,
Yeah.
I'll say Blink is all your culture. You know what I'm saying now.
Yes, of course, of course.
It's gonna be a different, you know, for example, like I don't know, Oasis over here for us, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's an interesting, which I actually feel similarly with. I don't dislike Oasis,
hmm
but people are obsessed with Oasis. I'm like, and I meet a lot of people from the States and other countries who see them more as a cult band, you know. But for us, it's strange because they're everywhere.
Dude,
They're
when they announced the reunion a couple of months ago, it was like
fun.
anyone that I knew that was in the UK or could fucking talk about, like all of the media, all of the people that I knew was like, "Are you gonna get your tickets? Am I gonna do this? Are we gonna?" It's just like, holy fuck, dude.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very similar. This song is actually why partly one of the three biggest ones I can think of that really informed the writing or what I think the Nightmares sounds like.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, we're
One
on.
of the three.
Yeah, we're on "I Miss You" right now, which does have the, you know, the Nightmare Before Christmas reference on it, and very much has that kind of what I imagine would start to filter people down to like My Chemical Romance and the Cure
Sure.
road and stuff like that. You know,
Definitely, there's a lot of the Cure in this. I couldn't even really put my finger on why exactly it's so. Because I wouldn't say this is like the Cure, but it's something about it that around this era that really led us down that, you know, like sort of gothic path, you know.
yeah.
And this was probably the first song I can think of from this album that, you know, obviously because it was a single
hmm
that showed this element of Blink-182. You know, if you think about it now in retrospect, no one had heard Blink like this at that time. You know, this
Correct.
was
Yeah.
goth. You know, this is
Yeah.
emo and goth. You know, so this is definitely one of the big three on this album that informs the writing of us, in my opinion, which is an interesting little tidbit. You know.
Yeah, and again, this is another song that I'm not gonna listen to it all the time, but like as I've been kind of like revisiting this album, it just kind of like gets stuck in your brain a little bit. But you mentioned something, so you mentioned that this song was kind of like a gateway to the Nightmares, being this album being a
Sure.
gateway to your type of stuff. I know that when we last spoke, you, myself, and Adam, you had mentioned that y'all had been like playing in bands for a little bit or a while and
Sure.
have like known each other for a while. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the Nightmares was your first band and everything like that. So how did you guys meet and start to do that? And then how did the bands that you played in before start to kind of inform and like gel into now what the Nightmares is?
That's interesting. A very interesting question. The Nightmares was I've known Adam a long time, too long, no, a long time, at least 20 years. We used to go to a place called Le Pub. We still go to a place called Le Pub,
Hmm.
which is a pub or slash bar in Newport. It puts on a lot of shows, and it was and it still is to this day, an alternative solace. It's somewhere that a lot of what you consider emo, hardcore punk,
Hmm.
they go there in our small little city now of Newport, and that's where we met. I also used to play with Craig, who's our newest member, a new guitar player who actually joined late last year.
Yeah.
So we played together in a band called Kickbox Riot, which was sort of like a punk indie sort of band. Around this time, a bit later, then Adam had started a band called Save Your Breath, which was a pop punk band. So that shows the correlation there.
Yeah.
And James, our drummer James, was in a band called Sharks, who actually toured with Blink,
Okay.
and they were like a little bit like the Clash, Social Distortion, that
Okay.
kind of
Cool.
thing. They did Warped Tour. They did a whole bunch of touring in the US with Social D and people like that. And yeah, so basically, we all knew each other through the local scene in Newport surrounding Le Pub. And in Le Pub, they used to play a lot of The Cure when we were growing up, Friday, I'm in Love, and that kind of thing. So that was our first sort of exposure to The Cure. So we were all bonded over that as young people.
Hmm.
Uh, Adam is with Ellie, they're married,
Yep.
and Ellie is a bit younger than us, but Ellie is from not too far from where I live. And obviously, she got Adam and Ellie formed a relationship. They invited me to play. We asked James, who had recently moved to the area because he's not from our area. He's from Coventry, near Birmingham.
Hmm.
And he had moved here to be with a mutual friend of ours. And so that's how we all got together, basically. But we'd all been in previous bands for years, and we knew each other through music and touring and that kind of thing.
I thought it was interesting because I've heard of so many bands since COVID that have had mutual friends in them for years or whatever, and then just like COVID was kind of that pressure cooker that they put in, and then we're just like, fuck it, let's just get out of our heads and do something. And then now they're in touring bands, making records and
Yeah,
stuff like that. It's very that all that experience, eventually paid off to get to a point to get out there. So I think that it's very interesting to see a similar path with the Nightmares, and it's just been great to see what y'all are doing. And I haven't mentioned this yet, but all of the influences that are in the Nightmares, again, just like Blank, are not ones that I really have a lot of familiar with, but yet the way that you all put them together are just like, yes, that gets right into to what I do, to where I can hear the Blink in the Nightmares.
yeah,
I could hear the Interpol, and I know that y'all are proud for wearing the Cure influences on your sleeve and everything
sure.
like that.
Yeah,
And yeah, I just think it's been really interesting, especially over the last like 4, 5, 6 years, as I've been starting to get into more goth bands like Unto Others or Tribulation or
it's
Grave
amazing.
Pleasures, or exactly like, a lot of similar influences as the Nightmares, but just in a different way. So like going back
Absolutely.
to like really listen to The Cure or like listen to Echo and the Bunnyman and stuff like that has been really, really fun. And, bands like the Nightmares or Tribulation Unto Others have kind of facilitated that to go back and do that. But yeah, anyways, I hadn't mentioned that before when we were talking about, how I'm not too big on Blink, that despite me not knowing a lot of the references and stuff like that for your all's music, it still works out really well. And I imagine that there's a lot of people that feel very similar to that.
Absolutely. I think that's the big, you mentioned three of the big four, maybe five bands that I really always think are huge in how we sound. And that being The Cure, Interpol, Alkaline Trio, Blink, and then maybe like a Placebo or something like that. And I think, but ultimately, I think Blink, their pop sensibilities are very similar. Not they're ultimately a pop band, aren't they? In terms
for sure.
In hooks and that kind of thing. There are still obviously punk rock and post-hardcore elements, but same as The Cure. The Cure are very poppy. They're not, in elements anyway. And I just think that's the pop sensibility is the crossover. That's where it lies. And I just think people come at things from different perspectives. You got like System of Banger.
Yeah, don't mind me. I'm just going to air drum right now while this is going on. We are on Stockholm Syndrome right now.
Syndrome. Yeah, this song's amazing. It's probably one of my favorite songs. Travis Barker is outrageous on this
crazy
song. But yeah, Tribulation, who I love Unto Others. They just come at it from a different angle. They perhaps bring in a Danzig or Metallica influence, where we'll bring in a Blink. Or Trio, so you're all in the same world, and as you say, painting with the same brush, but you're just coming at it from a different perspective.
Exactly. And another thing too, I mean, going back to the the style of the vocals and stuff like that, there are parts on both the new record and on Seance where I'll hear like a vocal line that Adam's doing, and I'll be like, I could very easily see this on a Blink record, but just because of the timbre of his voice or the tone of his voice, it isn't, it isn't Tom or anyone else, right? So it just is more palatable to me, which, big props up to Adam for that. But like, again, like that's just another like different strokes for different folks type of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's crazy really, because Tom DeLonge is my like ultimate person. It's funny how divisive it is, but for me,
for sure.
I absolutely adore him. But it's snowing outside. This song is amazing. This is one of my favorite songs on the album, and the intro to it, which we were chatting, but previously there was I believe there's like a spoken word intro, which I believe is a letter from someone in World War II to their loved one at home.
Interesting. Okay.
And they're writing, and it sets up the song perfectly. It's a really beautiful little interlude, which I would recommend to anyone. It's a really, it is real. It's not something they made up. It's a real.
No, I always have either Genius or the lyrics up so that I can go through them while we're talking and stuff like that. And Genius is always a great reference or resource for just like behind the scenes shit and stuff like that. But it says exactly what you said. So the interlude preceding it is Joanne Wally, Mark Hoppus's grandmother, who narrates a letter that her husband sent her during World War II, which is fucking cool. Yeah,
that's great, isn't it? And I thought it was Mark's, someone in Mark's family, but I didn't want to say it for sure.
Yeah, of course. No, I've got the internet, which the internet can't be wrong.
Now you've said it, I believe the internet. So yeah, and that's a very powerful thing. And it must be incredible for him to be able to listen to that. Because it's such a we've. So many people were affected by that. It's a huge thing, especially what's going on in the world now,
Yeah, and bring your family into what you're doing and everything like that as well. I think that's really big. And I know a lot of musicians will try that if they, have a good relationship with their family or family members or whatever, that's basically just telling part of his family story right there, which is, again,
Absolutely.
like
beautiful.
And especially thinking about the albums that they did before, right? And it's just like now they're interjecting like really, big and heavy stuff, or just like bits of their personality and things that are what would you call vulnerable? I guess there's a vulnerability to that, which there's I mean, I don't know how I wouldn't really know. I don't know how much you can speak about this for like their previous albums, how like vulnerable or emotional that they might be, but I definitely feel like they upped all of that in this one.
Yeah, well, Enema, I think the first, works with, Buddha, Cheshire Cat, Dude Ranch. I wouldn't say they're particularly sad or macabre, emotional songs on there. Mostly it's there are elements, but it's mostly in that sort of skate punk world. And then
Yeah.
Enema was well produced with Jerry Finn, but they did have Adam's song,
Yeah,
which is
oh
obviously
yeah, of course, of course. It makes me
they're
cry every
hinting at
fucking
it.
time, dude.
They're hinting at that. Then Take Off Your Pants and Jackets happened with Stay Together for Kids. So there you've got that, and then basically after that is when they took their break, and that's where Tom started Boxcar Racer, which informs this kind of song, in my opinion, brings in that post-hardcore element. I know Travis and him started that band,
Yeah,
and brought in those post-hardcore elements. I know Travis showed him bands, like I imagine like Jawbreaker and like other bands that he was able to, Fugazi and stuff like that. That informed that writing. But I think Mark took that personally, from what I know or hear or read, that he wasn't involved with it, and he felt that could have been a Blink album. So at the time, Travis was also doing Transplants.
Yeah.
With Tim Armstrong from Rancid, which is actually what we're about to hear now in the background is very Transplants.
Yeah, I'm glad that you got to that. Not to interrupt, but I had that album on repeat too, because the swing piano and all that other stuff, and that was a great album.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like Travis is in my opinion, a genius. I know some people think he overplays, and maybe he does in some sections, but for me, I would love to just be able to sit in a room and listen to him jam, because I think he's incredible.
Yeah.
His creativity is unparalleled, in my opinion. I truly believe that some of his beats are like, I could listen to them as songs, like his creativity. And as it's gone on, and that was another difference, I think, from Take Off Your Pants and Jacket into this album we're listening to now, is I think Travis gave them a lot of beats and pre-recorded material before he left to go on tour with Transplants. So Blink were writing to Travis's music, whereas before it was all Tom and Mark showing Travis.
I gotcha. And this little interlude that we're in right now kind of has that sort of like, it sounds like a hip hop beat that you could hear, like visualize someone coming in and like spitting a bar or something like that over this.
Hell yeah. This is very like LA. Is what I imagine.
Very much so.
I don't know, it has that feel, like hip hop feel into it, doesn't it? And I've always been a hip hop fan as well, so I love the fact they brought those elements in to the music on this album.
Yeah.
So this is really, like, in my opinion, the culmination of all their influences coming together: post-hardcore, The Cure, obviously pop punk, and then just pop sensibilities, hip hop from Travis, and that's where I really think it's getting to that creative peak at this time, which is so sad then that they couldn't figure out their differences, and they went on that big hiatus after this album, and they never really got to take it to that next level. So hopefully they will now. But
and that's what I was going to ask you, because they're Blink-182 came out in 2003, and then they didn't have another album until 2011. And I was going to ask you like how you feel about I know that they just came out with the record, last year, did the whole tour and everything like that. Like how do you, as someone who grew up with Blink-182, kind of like jive and feel and have grown with their output after this album?
Oh, I'm an obsessed. I really am a bit of an obsessive.
Yeah, you're just marked for all of it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter to me.
Fuck yeah, cool.
I love them, but it really it deeply hurt me as a young person. I still remember going on their website and seeing that message about the hiatus and just being like, what? I find it really hard to accept as a fan that they couldn't get on, because they did a great job of convincing the world that they were like the best friends of all time, didn't they? I think everyone knew that. I'm sure they are, but obviously, clearly things weren't going right at that time. But I think part of that was the fact that Tom and Travis did that project without Mark, and he probably did. So you can imagine how that would make you feel,
Yeah.
Obviously, I think it's just miscommunication from what I've read. Anyway, they went on, and then they came back with Neighborhoods, I believe. And that's a little disjointed. I still like it a lot. That's a little disjointed as a piece of work, in my opinion. I think it's got some great moments on there, but it's not as cohesive, I think part of that was Jerry Finn had passed away, I believe, by that point, sadly. And he was like sort of their fourth member for Enema, Take Off Pants and Jacket and this album.
Yeah.
So I think that really, and then obviously he did Boxcar Racer, he did Plus 44, which was Margaret Travis's band after this. But yeah, so I think after this album, they went away, did Angels Near Waves. Tom DeLonge did Angels Near Waves as well. And then it came together. So that Neighbourhoods album's a little bit disjointed, but then Tom left again. And then Matt Skiba came in, who was like another huge artist for myself and the Nightmares. And now, right now, I feel like they're at a great place, and I'm super happy for them. And I love their music. I love the new music.
So did you jive with the
adore
newest album? I haven't listened to it.
I love it. In fact, I was talking to someone about this on tour, and I rate it really highly. I really do.
Okay.
I think it's definitely right up there for me. It's not as, I don't think anything could, if you're a Blink fan, could usurp this.
Of course.
Enema, Dude, Ranch, or Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. I know that's 4 albums, but
yeah,
it's probably 5th. It could be 5th for me. You know, it could be.
That's interesting because again, I don't even think I could name you a single song from anything post this album or anything like that.
Yeah, so that was kind of definitely their like commercial peak. This wasn't it? You know,
of course, yes. And of course, you know, going on such a long hiatus after that is, you know, there's going to be so many expectations coming out. And I'm sure that we could name different types of bands that went off for a hiatus for a long time and then came back and either had a great album or a shitty album or like whatever it is. And it's just like a band this big, I imagine that there was a lot of pressure on them.
Oh, yeah.
On them for this one, just given the fact that they didn't know how to deal with fame and stuff like that when you just explode so fast. And I mean, the good thing is that at least, you know, all of them made it, because there have been a lot of bands that, you know, Nirvana, prime example, that don't know how to deal with fame and then they aren't here long enough to do that. But I'm glad that as a Blink fan and as someone who's like grown up with them, you can still like, you know, in 2023 they can release new music and you're like, no, I fuck with this a lot, and in fact it's just like right up there. That's really cool.
Like I think like this song is another song that I really think has got Cure elements in it, which might not be to the untrained ear, might not pick up on it, but you know, there's a guitar sound and the bass sound got a lot of Cure in it for me.
Yeah.
And so it's a big one. But I'm glad as well. The pressure that came with this album must have been huge at the time. Because if you think about it, coming off, I can't even imagine coming off an album like Enema into Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, and then everyone in the world wanting you to beat that. So, you know, like the pressure, and that is ultimately what led to their hiatus, I think. You know, it must have just been internal pressure, internal tension.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So like that would have it'd break anyone, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was just about to say, I mean, right, people talk about bands being in a relationship all the time because you don't have just like one person, you have however many people, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you know, each one of those is a person with, you know, mental health that they have to take care of and physical health that they have to take care of, and being in a pressure cooker like that and becoming
children.
You know,
I think they had children around that time as well. You know?
I can't even imagine it as someone who like, you know, has anxiety and just like feels very like when I'm out in the world, it feels like everybody's looking at me, even though that's not the thing. That's just anxiety, right? But then to actually be someone who's like, you know, because I think Mark was dating a supermodel at this time too, and so all of a sudden he's in the tabloids all the time
Travis,
and everything
Travis,
like that.
You mean,
Travis,
yeah.
And so I can't even imagine for that, but they got it out. You mentioned another band, so you very briefly mentioned System of a Down, and that's a band that I
didn't
always
mean
go
to
back.
mention that. I meant Sisters of Mercy, but I did
Sisters
say
of Mercy. Yeah, okay. Well,
but
either way,
do like don't get me wrong, I love System of a Down, but
yes,
I didn't mean to say that.
No, that's all right, but it works because that's a band that hasn't been able to get out of their own way with their interpersonal, you know, relationships and everything like that. Where I think of they probably, you know, as big as they are right now, I feel like probably could be one of the big bands in the world had they kept like just doing their stuff, just given, you know, how important and how massive all of their albums were and have been and everything like that. And, you know, at least Blink, you know, it took some time and maybe they're still navigating it and stuff like that, but they were able to do that. And fans like you have their albums to go through where like System of a Down was like my big gateway band, right?
Sure,
That
yeah.
was the band that started to really open my eyes from like the Nirvanas and the Foo Fighters that I was talking about to like your Iron Maidens and Metallicas and stuff like that. And I just think of, man, if we had even just like one or two albums from them in the last 20 years, what would the musical landscape look like? What would I look like? What would my music tastes look like?
Yeah, Stage's book is supposed to be amazing. Have you read it? That my friend Johnny was talking about it the other day. Apparently, obviously you can listen to it in audio book as well, but it's supposed to be really, really good. But I think, in fact, I was listening to Mesmerized today, I think, or either earlier today or yesterday.
Oh my God, it's so good.
And that song, like Lost in Hollywood at the end, for some reason I love that song. I don't know what it is, but I love it.
Dude, I have to call my partner out just a little bit, not for a bad reason, it's just fucking funny, but we were in the car one time and we were listening to, like, while not like, I wouldn't say that she is like a metalhead, she does like a lot of metal and a lot of the stuff that I listen to and stuff like that.
Sure.
But we were driving and she was like, I don't like this skip, and I just like looked at her because it was Lost in Hollywood by System of a Down, and I was like, I think I might propose to you right now just so that I can divorce you for what you just said.
I don't know what it is, but that song it touches me. It really gets me inside.
Yeah, I just want they're just a special band, and one of those things that can add the lyrical bit to the musical bit that just makes you feel something when it goes on. Yeah,
very deep. Yeah, I completely agree. I love System of a Down. This song in particular is another one of the big three I was talking about. Always, very. You can just hear there. It's very Cure-y to me as well. It brings in the synths which Blink. I've always used synths in the background. Well, not always, but in the Jerry Finn albums. But I use it a lot on this album and the songs like this. The bass tone, like that bass six they use. Mark uses the bass six a lot, which I know Robert Smith uses, and we've used a lot in our band. So yeah, this is another song that really, for me, if I was showing someone an example of where we feel that we get a lot of our influences from, would be this cross with the Cure. Super catchy 80s, but still got that sort of dark, macabre side to it.
Yeah, and of course with the Nightmares, you take that step an extra further to say like, no, we are made of spider webs and coffin dust and everything like that. You know,
absolutely. And then I remember also around this time that I don't know if you ever saw this, but the MTV, when MTV actually played music, it did an album launch for this album, and I know Adam and myself, we watched this. I've seen it hundreds of times. It's on YouTube. It's a brilliant documentary about the making of the album and then them launching it. And it's really interesting for anyone that likes Blink or just has a passing interest in this album or just music, really, because I'll watch any. I don't know about you, but any music documentary I watch.
No, I am absolutely the same.
Documentaries,
It seems like every 2 years there becomes a period in my life where it's like, okay, for like 3 months straight, I'm just watching music documentaries.
Sure,
dude, music documentaries, autobiographies, big fan over here.
Huge fan. We got that virtual high five.
Yeah, boom. This song right here, sorry to interrupt, like this is that, like, I kind of feel that this is more a little bit back into that take off your pants and jacket, Enema of the State type of deal on it. Just like gets you really, really up.
This is a song called Easy Target, and this is a lot. It still has that dark element. This transition now into the next song is great. But yeah, another thing that I think about this album is you really see a jump in the depth of both their lyrics. In particular, Mark, his lyrics really stand out for me as the band. It goes from Take Off Your Pants and Jacket into this album. Lyrically, he just really stepped it up, and I feel like it became more almost borderline poetry as opposed to before. It was more, they always had joke songs, and everyone fans love the joke songs, but they definitely introduced more metaphorical lyrics, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this song, I have to say, is probably the biggest song for, I know myself and I know Adam, growing up in terms of going from Blink and then into The Cure, because that is Robert Smith.
Yep.
They got Robert Smith on this song, because I know Mark was a huge fan of them growing up. And going back to what I said previously, when we started going to Newport into the pub as younger people, we were exposed to the big Cure songs. And I think in 2001 they released the greatest hits. You know, there were CDs at the time.
Mhm.
And I know myself and Adam had that. I knew it was huge for Adam. Those songs were massive. But you know, as a young person in 2001, we didn't have the capability to hop on a streaming platform and stream all the Cure's catalog.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't have the money to buy them all. So that was
Sure.
a good little compilation of the hits that I know Adam obsessed over. And I think this album, this song in particular, sort of really cemented that. And then I saw them on this tour, and they played in Wembley Arena, and Robert Smith came and sang.
Oh,
this
fuck
song
yeah,
with them.
dude.
And then a couple of years later, I think they did. I think MTV did an Icons. I think Blink did Letter to Elise on that for the Cure.
Okay.
Again, coming together, blending over. That
Yeah.
you know, I just think that sometimes if you just like a surface level fan, you're gonna get only hear like first day. You're gonna hear all the small things. So I understand someone that might not have a deeper interest in Blink could see them as just a throwaway band, you know. But
Yeah.
what I'm trying to get at, if you really do a deep dive, there's a lot of depth to the band that doesn't all initially meet the eye, you know.
Yeah, very much so, because I do think this is probably one of my favorite songs on this record, just given it's so different from everything else on it, and it's given the sequencing having this later in the album, and after a couple of like really like maybe not poppy is the right word, but energetic, fast kind of like two-stepping, shake your ass type of numbers or whatever, right? To kind of like pull everything down and then have Robert Smith in here with it, I think is really, really cool. And I mean, exactly what you said as far as like surface level stuff and stuff like that. Like, yeah, I mean, I can tell you, like, I had that very experience over the last couple of weeks of like looking through all that stuff,
I think it's hard to, it's easy, sorry, to underestimate how much of an impact them having Robert Smith on this album must have had for a generation. Because I think it probably exposed so many people to the Cure that, like, we've known them, but perhaps, when you're a young person and you're obsessed with the band, you listen to what they say, won't you? So, like I know, like myself, I know Adam, I know a lot of people that really hear this and like, oh, I gotta go and listen to everything by the Cure now.
Did you? So was that like, I'm sure you were familiar with them from just like growing up in Wales and everything like that, but did you know their stuff, or was this that
Not
kind of thing
intently.
okay?
Not intently. Like I mentioned earlier, we heard them in the pub, like
Sure.
Friday I'm in Love, and everyone would dance around. And I knew the singles. Funnily enough, they actually recorded a new album about 20 miles from where I'm sat, which is
That new album's really good, dude. It's really fucking good.
Yeah, we love it. Yeah, we knew like the hits basically.
Mm-hmm.
So after that is when we did the deep dive. So yeah, Blink, this album, that's what I'm trying to get at, and really want to drive home here is I know Adam loved the Cure around 2001 when, like I say, so the greatest hits, we have that, and we're really loving that. I think this comes out in 2003 and just sends us all down the rabbit hole, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
we
exactly.
go full backtrack, and then we're getting like Disintegration, which is like all like my favorite Cure album, like and you go back and you like Pornography and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that, that's when we go back and we really deep dive into all their material,
Yeah, and what you said I think is so important, because I'm seeing that happen nowadays with a lot of the, I hesitate to call them like the younger metal bands or like the younger bands or whatever, but the artists in their like mid to late 20s or even like early 30s that are just now starting to like tour and get out in front of people and play some stuff that were fucking like listening to Korn when they were growing up, or listening to Slipknot when they were growing up and everything like that, right?
Deftones are massive at the moment.
Huge, yeah, especially over we like Loathe and everything like that, and all the band. Like I've started to hear, dude. Oh yeah, I've started. Blanket is fucking amazing. They're so good. I mean, like exactly what you said about Robert Smith being on this, a generation ago, and then having those people, a whole new generation exposed to the Cure. I'm seeing that a lot with like newer metal bands getting teenagers and young people into the older stuff too, which is great.
That's great. That's what it's all about, though. That's what I was trying to get at earlier, and I think that's the thing with streaming now, is it's so easy to just hear so much music, and that's not neither good nor bad.
Right.
It is good, but, we can also have negatives. But that's why I was trying to get at earlier with the CD thing or
Yeah.
vinyl, whatever medium it was. You'd be obsessed. Like, I know every single moment of this CD.
Yeah.
Not as it
Yeah,
was for me.
and that's where I was going next, because you
Yeah, yeah.
spent your hard-earned money on this thing, and this is all that you had access to.
Yeah, and you'll get every bit of it. And then, like, it was just such a huge thing to sit there and just obsess over the CD for it. And that might be the only CD you can buy for 3 months. Do you know what I mean? So it's not that easy to find. It's not that easy to find other music at that time.
Yeah. I was gonna say there are bands where I only knew like one album from them or something like that, because it was the only one that I had. And I don't mean this to sound like Old Man at Cloud or anything like that, because you're right. With streaming, it is both good and bad, because you do have access to all of this shit, but also all of that stuff doesn't feel as personal to you as much anymore.
Quite easy to turn it off, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's too easy to turn it off. Yeah.
Well, my friend, we are on the last song. This album just flew fucking by.
Yeah,
Holy shit.
it did.
Yeah. This is
really.
I'm Lost Without You.
It is. Yeah. This is very much like it feels like an outro song. It's a sadder, more mid-tempo kind of song, in my opinion. But I always liked that kind of 2000s way of sequences, as you said earlier, or setting up an album. We start with like an energetic opener, and you end with that sort of mid-paced, like what I used to do is I used to fall asleep to albums.
Yeah.
So like this song would have been the one that I was sort of drifting off in bed, before school or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And that is something that I love about an album, which I again is kind of lost now, because again, not by any, I'm not one to say like streaming's bad or anything like that, but I guess if you're listening, you'd have a playlist on, wouldn't you? But back then I had a CD, and when the CD sort of trailed off, I'd fall asleep,
Yeah.
And that was part of the experience of it. And that's something we've tried to recreate with the Nightmares in both our albums.
Yeah.
When people hear Fire in Heaven, they'll hear the new album, that the first song it opens very energetically and ends on a song called Melancholy Waltz, which will be a sort of a nice outro for people. And I like to envision people, sounds weird, right? But not envision them falling asleep, but I like the idea of people perhaps being able to drift off, listening to that song.
Yeah, and
So-
I mean, dude, I had the same exact experience. Like, there's some times where I'd like be drifting off, and then sometimes things would come back. What was it? The Great Southern Treadkill, when the last song goes out and then it comes back in after a little bit. I would wake up to that. And, oh my god, what the fuck?
That was the worst. When you'd have the secret song,
Yeah.
and you'd be like, they're little teenagers, and bang.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
But yeah, that was a lot. Luckily not on this album.
Yeah, no, but this album, I mean, you mentioned Fire in Heaven. I mean, I can definitely see a lot of just even this specific song kind of stretched out, painted throughout the entire album on that,
Yeah, definitely. And that's what we really wanted to bring in, those those different feelings, different textures. We don't want everything just to be one pace.
Right.
We have energetic songs, we have slower songs. There's a couple of songs on there which I do generally think will be a surprise for some people. A lot more, just wait and see. But
Yeah.
I can't find my words. But there's just a lot of different. We're painted with a lot of different brushes on this album, but it all sounds like us.
Yeah, and so I wanted to come back around to I know I'm not trying to make you speak for Eleanor or speak for Adam or anything like that, but obviously we talked about how when they were setting up the band and he was like, hey, maybe you should play keys or sing or whatever. She's like, I'm not gonna fucking do that in front of people or whatever. Now, you're touring the country and like, doing all that stuff. And she seems to have so much more of a larger presence on this album than on Seance, which seems intentional for me, and even like some songs that are revolve around her voice and everything like that. Again, not have you speak for Eleanor, but as far as like a band and knowing her and like being around in that, can you I guess talk about the growth in like her confidence and as a musician, and like what you've seen and how it's kind of materialized and diffused through the band?
Yeah, absolutely. When we started the band, she, I didn't really know Ellie that well when we first started the band, but Ellie is an amazing woman, and she is honestly one of the coolest people I've ever met, really.
Mm,
And she is an absolute joy to be around. But yeah, at first she was reluctant, I guess, like anyone would be. That she'd
sure.
never been in a band,
Mm,
she'd never played live, as far as I know. She grew in confidence. I remember the first EP we did. She did. We used to ask her to sing a little bit. It'd be like not ask, but be like, "Would you like to sing?"
mhm.
But for that, she didn't really find herself. But then Seance, she grew in confidence, obviously performing live, and yeah, she just. But every single time we practice, she gets more confident. You can see it, you can feel it.
Yeah, I mean, I can
And,
hear it.
yeah, and now she's such a focal point for the band. Like
Yeah.
they're almost, I'd say now they're pretty much dual front people. I think both Adam and Ellie. I'd say now that even the way we set up live, I'd say they're both our front. It's Adam and Ellie front and center.
Yeah.
And I like that sort of duality. Yeah, she's just really come on leaps and bounds. And she's a credit to herself.
Yeah, and I think that's a credit to anyone who's looking to not even just like reinvent themselves, but just do something and like put themselves out there. And like, if you feel that it's too late to like fucking start playing drums or to start painting or whatever it is, like, no, it's not. Hey, you never know. And as long as you're just doing something that you love, I think that, it's never too late to do anything.
Absolutely, like that. And now Ellie sings in a band called Murder Club as well. She plays guitar. She learned guitar in like I don't know, like a year or something.
Hell yeah, dude.
And now she plays live. And she sings them. I am just like, hey, you left me behind. Like,
Yeah.
I've just been playing bass for like I'm not saying how many years.
Yeah,
But
she's gonna start playing bass pretty soon, and you're gonna be like,
also,
"Fuck, what do I do?"
she definitely play bass. She probably usurped me pretty quickly. But you can stay in your lane, Ellie. No, but no, she's awesome, and it really has elevated the band, as well as Craig, our new member,
Yeah,
host after Seance.
he played with you at the show that I saw
He
with you,
did,
right?
yeah.
Correct. Okay.
He played. I think we did a tour with a band called. I know we did Kids in Glass Houses, just before Creeper. I think we had a pretty good little run late last year. I think we
Yeah.
did Kids in Glass Houses. We did Feel for a Friend and Dashboard Professional, and then we did Creeper. So Craig joined for Kids in Glass Houses. As initially we just wanted an extra a live element.
Hmm.
We loved Craig, and he's an amazing musician, probably one of the best guitar players you'll ever see. To be honest with you, if you sat with him, you'd be amazed what he
Yeah.
can. And yeah, and it just went so well that we asked him to be an official member, and he's elevated the band hugely as well. So I'm really excited for people to hear the growth in the songwriting, not only the songwriting, the playing.
Yeah.
Craig's added elements, as well as Ali, as you say, being a lot further to the front, so to speak, on this album.
How did I guess the experience that you all have had, like playing, touring, and then writing together and stuff like that, kind of help inform this album? Did you all like jam together, like get in a room to play, or was it like Adam and Ellie doing a lot of the stuff at their house and then bringing it to y'all?
Yeah, I mean, well, it always starts with Adam and Ellie for the most part. It's usually their idea, but obviously this album we were able to actually physically jam and work on arrangements and structures more together in the room. So yeah, we definitely it had more collaborative. Not that the other one wasn't, but the obviously purely because we couldn't see each other, we were on
Exactly, and that's
laptops.
what I'm getting at too. Yeah.
There's still a lot of that anyway. I know that James writes his drum parts with Adam. They still use that technique in that they send Adam will demo an idea, send it to James. He'll put the drums to it on his laptop, and then we sort of build from there.
Yeah.
And it's very. We'll physically see it grow, and then we'll work on it again in the room, and flesh it out. And then Craig, it just does Craig things over the top,
Yeah.
and makes them and elevates them.
There you go. Puts his little
and-
special Craig powder on it, right?
Yeah, he really. I can't over egg the pudding on that. He's a fantastic player, and we're very lucky to have him.
I love that. And yeah, I'm excited for people to hear this record when
Yeah.
it comes out as well. But so, my friend, that was Blink 182's Blink 182, probably the 12 millionth time that you've listened to that one. You could probably just hum it backwards and forwards and everything like that. So listening to it and chatting about some of the things, what are your last thoughts, and or what you want people to know about this record and how you feel about it?
I just want it's just such a they are and they always will be my favorite band, and just because of how much they informed me as an individual, and
Yeah.
this album in particular is, in my opinion, their masterpiece. It is the apex predator of Blink, and I just feel that I'm just so thankful they made it. I'm very saddened that they couldn't hold it together for and make the album that I think a lot of fans of this band think they could have made after this.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I understand as a a person that has my own life. Like they weren't. When you're younger than the band at the time, you probably think, why would they throw it away? But they were having children. I know young families, so they wanted to do other things. They wanted to be more at home. So I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. But it's just in my opinion, such a huge moment in time for a lot of people, and really then is the perfect arc from pop punk into what would become emo, post-hardcore, that sort of next movement that came after pop punk with My Chem, Fall Out Boy, and that those kind of bands. So it's just my personal. It will always be my favorite. People say like, "What album would you take to a desert island?" It would be this album for me.
I love that, my friend.
Yeah, it's got everything in there, every emotion, every memory. It's got so many memories attached to it. I met them around that period, and just a magnificent album from a band that I'm very thankful I found at the age I did.
And as a Blink 182, I don't want to say hater because that's way too. I don't hate them because I don't think about them
Yeah,
that much to
yeah.
hate them, right? But like, as someone who is not a Blink 182 fan or listens to them a lot, I have found a lot to enjoy from this record. I can't say that maybe like, oh, it's gonna become something that I spin all the time or whatever, but
Yeah,
there's some songs that got
sure.
sneakily added to the playlist and will come around
Absolutely.
again. And I will say, multiple spins over this from like listening with you right now and, prepping for this and everything like that certainly has like, I see all of the points that you're making about it. And I can see where this was, that kind of coming of age album where where everything just gelled the right way. And yeah, I hope that if people either don't like Blink 182 or haven't listened to that one, will go back and listen to it and make their own opinions on it. And maybe we'll get some I don't know, what would you call it, converts or something like that into
Yes,
Blink
yeah. And if I
182.
could do that, then I would make me very happy if one or two people give it a chance, because it's not all just joke songs. They have a lot of depth. There's a lot there, and it was made at the right time for me, and clearly the right time for a lot of people, because it was
Yes.
a
And
huge
dude,
thing.
that's the thing. Timing is everything with bands. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? Like you can't, you can still have an amazing album, but if the timing isn't right, maybe it just falls into what that cult status or something like
Exactly,
that.
and it can also be things like Dookie or Nevermind, like you rightly say. I know that they're amazing albums. I love those albums. They're in my collection. But because I didn't grow up with them, they didn't emotionally get me at the time the way this did. If that makes sense,
No, it makes
from at
complete
least my
sense.
perspective,
No,
anyway.
no, for
Yeah,
sure. And like especially given your previous experience with the past album and stuff like that, and
sure.
like I said at the top, like growing with this band, I think that is huge for for people that were around during that time. And I'm curious to see what the current generation has with this album specifically, given that like obviously they can't grow with it and they don't have that experience and that same type of deal. But if the songs are still as emotionally impactful for someone who's listening to this album for the first time in 2025 or whatever it is, than
Yeah.
it was when 2003. So spinningthewax@gmail.com. If you're listening to this in the audio version, let me know, are you a Blink 182 convert? Do you hate Mark Hoppus's voice? Do you hate Tom DeLonge's voice? Do you like the
No.
other ones? Or if you're on YouTube, leave a comment below. Let us know on how you feeling. And if you want to yell at me about not liking Blink 182 or whatever, whatever. That's totally fine. I'm here for it. I'm not going to get mad if you do that. But Ben, thank you so much for lending your time and sharing Blink 182 with me, and guiding me through this album, and just being a G, and lending your time, and writing good music, and being a good dude, man.
Thank you. You likewise, John. It's been a pleasure.
There is a little bit of Hell Is Going to Happen for you. One of the singles off the Nightmares' brand new sophomore album, Fire in Heaven, which is available everywhere on February 14th. Just such a perfect emo goth day, Valentine's Day, so I'm happy that release date worked out for them. A massive, huge thanks and shout out to Ben for sharing his time with us and sharing that listening experience with us as well. Well, I'm certainly no Blink convert after that. It was definitely refreshing to get to enjoy an album through Ben's ears and eyes instead of my own personal biases, and experience something else through someone that is really passionate about it and really loves it. That's really like the whole crux of this show and why I wanted to start it in the first place. I personally will have to definitely check out the most recent album from Blink. I've not heard it yet as of this recording, and I hope you, dear listener, fall into a little bit of a Blink hole of your own if you fancy. And yes, in the spirit of Dude Ranch and Cheshire Cat and all of those other things, pun very much intended. Don't forget to check out Fire in Heaven after it releases on Valentine's Day. And if you're in the UK, definitely go see the Nightmares if they're coming to a local venue near you. You will have an amazing time, and I can tell you from experience. All right, everyone, that is it. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you're on YouTube. If you're on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. It definitely helps an independent show like this one. While you're at it, you can follow Spinning the Wax on Instagram at Spinning the Wax. And you can head over and support the show directly on Patreon at patreon.com/Spinning the Wax. Follow me directly at Stay Puffed Malo on Instagram. And if you have any Blink stories, any stories about the Nightmares, or anything related to the album, or any of the bands or guests that we've had on, or albums that we've listened to so far, reach out to spinningthewax@gmail.com. Let me know what you have to say. I'm very interested in you, dear listener, and what you have to think. So, programming note for the next couple of weeks. Next week, I will be heading off to London for a weekend, but plan on another episode that week on February 19th when Andrew Lee of Bay Area death metal band Ripped to Shreds stops by to take us to school. The subject? Gore Grind. We listened to an EP and a full album. Both of those combined are about 30 minutes long or less. So you're not going to want to miss it. And after that, there's going to be a bit of a break, I don't know, a week or two as I recover from the jet lag and get settled on American soil again. But after that, we'll be back. I already have a bunch of interviews already scheduled. I'm sorry, already recorded. They're beyond scheduled. They're recorded and ready to go. And so those will be coming out in March and April, along with a lot of albums by said bands. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And yeah, I'm very excited to announce all of those. But soon. We'll have to wait till I get back. So thanks for all of your support so far, everybody. We will see you next time. Until then, stay safe, stay sane, stay heavy, stay puffed.